Z-spheres. Z-spheres is a great way of creating base geometry for something like a body. You can do it with Dynamesh and ZRemesh, but I like Z-spheres for bodies because it's almost like making a stick figure armature, and you can get a lot of character very quickly with this method. So let's go. So here we have a Z-sphere body, and I've even created a Z-sphere hand with it that's attached. And if I hit A, I can get a preview of what this mesh is going to look like. So it doesn't look like much, but something just that stick figure body. How do we create this? Let's look at that. So here I'm going to go back to my Z-sphere scene, and Z-spheres can be found in the geometry tab under the 3D meshes. So if I go to 3D meshes, it's about at the center of it here. So select that, and here I have my Z-sphere. You'll quickly notice that Z-spheres have this like red and burgundy shaded, half and half. And if I hit X, I can have symmetry on this surface. Now, how this works is Z-spheres are not meshes that you sculpt. Instead, you will draw out shapes with these strange spheres here. But the first thing you should do is make your brush size as small as possible, because you don't really need a brush size for it, and actually the fall off of the brush size gets in the way. And then next we'll have symmetry on the surface. I hit an X, and here I'm going to just drag out with Q, because what we're going to do differently here is that Q is to draw a sphere, and then W, E, and R is move, scale, rotate. So we'll move them into place. So Q, I'll draw out a sphere, and then I'm going to draw out another one. And I'm grabbing the center where the two rings overlap. That's how I know I'm dead center, because I have symmetry on. So if I look at this shape, I could say, alright, this sort of looks like a torso. And if I hit W, I can move these Z-spheres and adjust this torso to my liking. So I can say, alright, this is about the lower part of the rib cage, and then the hip area here. So let's continue to build. Q for draw, and I'll go and I'll drag in the start of the legs here. So I'm going to draw out just about there, and I'll quickly draw out another one on top of that sphere, and then we'll rotate and shift and snap to the front view, and then W for move, and I'm going to pull out that leg all the way down to the ankle. So I'm going to go to the side view, make sure that I'm always paying attention to the anatomy. So I want to make sure that the center of gravity is right, and this geometry can hold itself up. So that the center line right here looks pretty good. And then what I'll do now is I'll drag out a sphere with Q for the foot, and let's do 2, and let's move this foot out here. So we're going to move this foot out there, like there. E is for scale, so if you want to adjust the size of these spheres, you can do that afterwards. That's not that important at the moment. Let's go back to Q and snap in the knee. So I'm going to pick the knee, so that's draw. So now I have the knee, and I can pull the knee out. So we already got some like body language happening right here. W for move, and I can decide how I want to position these. So let's go back to Q, which is draw, and I'm going to draw out the shoulders, and then I'll draw out the start of the arm. Then I'll go to the front view and move this arm out all the way. So let's say the arms are down, so it's about here. And I'll go back to E, which is scale, and I'll scale the shoulders down. They were a little too big. And I might as well do the wrist. There we go. And W for move, to move the shoulder in place. Maybe I want to pull the shoulders out a little bit. And then now we're going to do the same thing we did on the knees. We're going to hit Q to pop in the elbows. Draw, which is Q, and W for move, and pull that elbow back. So now we got elbows. And so let's draw on the neck. So I'm going to draw the neck on there. And another point, you want to anchor the Z-sphere with one, and then go ahead and add another one. So if I want the neck forward, that looks good. And if I want to adjust this, I can go to W and move this back. It really changes everything. So now he's got his shoulders back. You can sketch in 3D. We're creating these stick figures, and you can decide what kind of a character you're going for. Right on the Z sphere, you can say, okay, I want to go for this head forward and shoulders sloping down, maybe sloping down and back. And this is all with the move tool, something like that. Alright, so if I'm grabbing with W, if I'm grabbing the bone, which is, well, the joint actually, which is here, you'll move that point in space. And if I grab the bone, which is this part here, I'll move the whole chain down there. So you can grab this point here, which is the bone, or you can grab the joint. So you get a lot of control here. So Z-spheres are awesome for that. You can really just tweak the body so easily. Alright, so say we like this. Then the preview mesh button is A. So if I hit A, I'll get a preview of the mesh. Now this doesn't mean that I can sculpt on this mesh yet. This is just a preview. In order to sculpt on it, we then have to go to Make Polymesh 3D. So if I click on that button, you have to look for the PM3D version, which we happen to be on. So make sure it says PM3D, Polymesh 3D. And then we also have the one above it, which is Z-sphere. And if we go back to it, they look the same. The only difference is the Z-sphere will give me the option to go back to the Z-spheres with A. And the PM3D, if you hit A, nothing happens. So in the PM3D mesh, the only thing we have to do to complete this is go to Shift F. And you notice this sort of looks like the Dynamesh. So we don't want to work in here. So what we'll then go do is go to Z Remesh. Make sure you have symmetry on, which I do. Turn the target polygon count pretty low, and then hit Z Remesh. So you always want to clean up this mesh, or any mesh that you make, whether it's Dynamesh or primitive, with Z Remesh. That's going to give you the better mesh to sculpt with. So this mesh is really nice, and the first thing that I'm going to do to get this thing in a workable state is I'm going to smooth down some of these areas like this, and maybe even turn down my smooth brush, so I can hold on Shift and go to the Z intensity and turn that way down and smooth out there. So you can see the quality of the mesh as you start to smooth, because the edge flow is really nice. I mean, nice for one click is pretty amazing. So I'm just smoothing it down to reveal the edge flow. But this thing is ready to be sculpted. This is a nice mesh here, ready to sculpt. If you want, you can inflate some of those areas that may have collapsed too much, like the shoulders. You use the inflate brush, and the rib cage. And maybe the hip area a little bit. The glutes. And the quads. And so you can go out around and inflate first, and then divide it and continue sculpting. Now the hand, it's up to you. I mean, you want to attach it to this body, you certainly can. Well, or you can build it separately. And I'll just build it separate so I can give you guys an idea how to go about making a Z-sphere hand. So I'm going to go back to my Z-sphere. Oh, and let me show you another thing actually. So let's say we didn't want a Z-sphere. All we have to do is once we're in draw, we can hold down Alt, and if you look, it's very small, but it's there. There's a little negative sign that pops up when I hold on Alt. If you click on the Z-sphere, it deletes the Z-sphere. So you can hold on Alt to delete Z-spheres if you like. But I'll leave them in and I'll build the hand. So we will go back to draw and I'll draw out a hand. We got to draw the wrist, the palm, and I'll move this palm. You see how my brush size is affecting the Z-spheres? I'm actually pulling more. It's based off of the fall off of the brush. So it's moving. So that's why you want to have your brush size really small. So this way you only pull that Z-sphere. So let's say I drag my hand out there and I'll make this palm a little bit wider. Space for the fingers. Q, and I'm going to draw the thumb there, and I'll draw another smaller Z-sphere. Might as well do another here, and then W, and then I'll move that Z-sphere out, and I can scale it as well. So I can scale the beginning of the thumb and the end here, and then draw, which is Q, and I can pop in a few others. I can put in my index, my middle, my ring, and my pinky, and then draw another Z-sphere on top of that. Once again, we're doing these doubled up Z-spheres so that we can pull out one of them. So I'm going to go to W and I'll move the fingers out. So I'm going to go here and pull these fingers out. See there again, the fall off is pulling too much of the second Z-sphere. So once I have that set up, I can go to scale and I can scale down the tips of the fingers. And move to adjust things here. So try to, I mean, you're working on the sphere, so it's always a little strange how this ends up, but it's not bad for quick geometry. And then I can go to Q and pop in the knuckle. W to move things around. Alright. So here we can grab the bone and you can see how you can move the whole wrist. Another thing to note is that if I start to move, and you'll notice that the Z-spheres look a little inverted. Be careful with that. You don't want that. That's going to give you some problems there. So if you see that happening, move it to adjust so that you don't have the overlapping. And so there's my Z-sphere hand, and if I hit A to preview the mesh, it's a pretty good result, especially if we go and we dynamesh that afterwards, or I'm sorry, Z-remesh it. Alright, so there's our preview mesh, and I'll go ahead and make it a poly mesh. So the poly mesh now, the PM3D, I have two of them because the first version I don't have hands and it's a PM3D, and then this new version PM3D, and then you have the Z-sphere above it. So just make sure that you're in the PM3D. It has the name PM3D Z-sphere, and if you hit A, nothing will happen. If you go to the Z-sphere and you hit A, you get the Z-spheres again. So PM3D is where you want to be, and then go back down now with symmetry to Z-remesher and make the Z-remesher brush mesh. So now we are going to be able to sculpt on this, inflate the fingers if they collapse too much. But this is a really decent mesh to start sculpting with. And one of the older methods of creating a mesh in ZBrush, but I like this method a lot. So there's your hand. Might have gone a little too low with the target poly count. Maybe you want to turn it up a little bit so you don't lose the shape on the fingers. But this is pretty decent if I divide it. Looks pretty nice. And once again, you can go quickly into your smooth and just knock the palm down a little bit. It's a little puffy. So you can start there. And there is my body with hands.